What is up, Lit Lucid Podcast fans? We are happy to have you back for Season 7 of the show. This season is brought to you by Seed Smith, an amazing cannabis company located right here in Denver, Colorado. Visit our website, litlucid.com, to learn more about our sponsors and to view our previous episodes. And if you're enjoying the show, be sure to share with a friend and give us a review on your favorite platform. Without further ado, here are your hosts, Lucy and Jared.
Welcome, everybody, to the Lit and Lucid podcast. We are here recording live in the Seed Smith Dispensary. We have Robbie Wroblewski. He is the Director of Communications and Outreach, as well as Mike Lempert. He is the Logistics Manager here at Seed Smith. Today, we are celebrating our 70th episode, Season 7. So we appreciate you all for joining us through this journey, and we appreciate Seed Smith for having us today live in their dispensary. It's really cool.
Episode 70.
Yes.
70 of them.
Wow.
It's cool. We're excited to knock out 70 and excited to have you guys be part of the continued growth of Lit and Lucid and help usher in like a new era of what we're trying to accomplish here.
We're excited to be here.
Yes.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for coming out. We think this is super important to the industry and, kind of legitimizing and furthering our cause for all this stuff.
And we have some pretty little ladies joining us today, too, so that's pretty fun.
Pretty ladies, what are their names, Mike?
That's Mac 1, I believe, over there. Miracle Alien Cookies. And then this one here is Cushman's.
So special guests. So they may not speak any words, but the vibes are speaking. The vibes are speaking
good
today. So glad to have everybody a part of this show.
All right, a little bit more about Seed Smith. They were founded in 2014. They specialize in producing top shelf flower. They're a leading cultivator, a concentrate manufacturer, and a dispensary all under one roof. So if you're interested in learning about how your cannabis is grown and cultivated and processed and packaged, you can literally come to the Seed Smith Dispensary and find out yourselves. They offer tours most days of the week, and they're free. So why would you not come out and check it out? And the one reason why they do this is because they're really focused on consumer transparency. They want the consumers to understand exactly how their plant's growing, what's gone into this full process. They can ask questions. They can learn more about all of the processes offered here at Seed Smith. So that's really one of their founding principles is transparency. And I know that you both are going to speak a little bit more to that. So if you want to just dive in, maybe explain to us a little bit more how you entered the industry, and then we'll learn more about the dispensary.
Absolutely. So I entered the industry about 7 years ago, a little closer to 8, and I was with several different companies up until 2017 when I joined Seed Smith. When I started looking for other positions within the industry, something about Seed Smith always spoke to me about how their mission was, how they wanted to interact with the community. So I definitely came on with the idea that transparency was going to be a key to all of this. The way that the industry has grown, I think there's a lot of need for good information for people that are just starting out using cannabis or experimenting with it. And yeah, that's definitely why I joined up with Seed Smith. I came into the industry just as an advocate. I worked all the way up from a trimming position to what I am now, just as learning everything that I possibly could about the way things are grown and what we are doing as an industry.
Yeah. And I think that's cool to be able to start at the bottom and work your way up through a lot of the positions. That's what I did too, and that's what I always attributed to a lot of my success is that I understand the processes, I understand what goes into this in the back end, and so not only can you articulate it to potential customers, but at the same time you have a respect for all the different parts and all the different people that touch the plant on the way to you packing a bowl or smoking a vape pen. I guess there's a lot of work that goes in.
Yeah.
And I know that you also use it medicinally. Is that correct? So that was probably important for you.
It always has been. When I was a younger kid and in the underground and everything like that, and, traveling around, finding those people that had stuff that had cannabis that I would consider a decent grade was really hard. And so early on in my trials and errors of all that, it was really hard to dial in how I can medicate effectively with cannabis. Since legalization, since medical out here in 2009, and recreational in 2014, it's been a lot easier to really build a regimen that is specific to myself, and it's been working wonderfully. I haven't had need to take any kind of pharmaceutical meds for over 10 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. What you mean by building a regimen for yourself, is that more on having access to different types of products? And
Absolutely, and it comes again with all this knowledge that we're here to share, and Seed Smith is here to share. It comes along with like what kind of strains work for me, why do they work for me, what kind of growth cycle are they going through, that will help me determine if this is effective medicine. Again, like knowledge is power in anything in cannabis, and that's why I definitely started in it, just so I could be a person who is out there screaming from the mountaintops.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Mike? Tell us a little about your past and how you ended up here.
So my background's a little different than most in the cannabis space. I was somewhat recruited to come out here in early 2015 when Seed Smith was being conceptualized, when the building was purchased and the build-out started. I was reached out to with the idea that this was going to happen, just they didn't know exactly when. And at that time, I was kind of in a fork in the road. I was on my way to either go down the route of PA school. I had the idea that I wanted to go into ortho PA. I was working in the hospital system for a few years prior to that, and that was my goal at the time. And then when the opportunity for Seed Smith arose, it put me in a weird place. And it was whether or not I wanted to go down the road where I knew where I'd end up. I knew exactly what I'd be doing every single day. You know, hips on Wednesdays, knees on Thursdays, office on Friday, whatever the case may have been. And this was obviously spontaneity. I didn't know anything about cannabis other than the bags of weed I bought from the local dealer in high school and college. And, you know, this offered something that the PA route didn't. So ultimately, after a few visits to Denver, convincing my wife that Denver's better than South Florida, we made the move. I showed up here day two, basically. We were on our second harvest when I showed up. And at the time, there was maybe 6-7 employees here. We had one license going. That was our medical grow. And that's it. Dispensary wasn't open yet. Extraction lab wasn't built out yet. It was just a medical grow with, 12 rooms growing plants. So started at the bottom, started as a harvest and trim guy, and slowly as more responsibility became available here at Seed Smith, I would take on those roles and responsibilities. And that kind of kept growing and growing and growing. The umbrella got bigger, and here I am today running the logistics department, which is kind of an all-encompassing umbrella. There's lots. We basically touch every single department here, and it's exciting. It's always new. It's a spontaneity that I wanted and I got, and it's extremely exciting.
That's a fun background, and I think that's something that not a lot of people touch on, is the spontaneity, I guess, and
Absolutely.
And the fact that you can walk into a new business, I guess, like a startup, and I mean, it is a startup in a sense, and 3-4 years later, you have multiple hats you wear now compared to the one when you walked in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity, I think. Just what I'm trying to express, that just within a single business, that you can do a lot of different roles, and the business requires a lot of different roles and a lot of different people to produce a product at the end of the day.
Well, and especially like within the cannabis industry, just because, for a long time it's been the Wild West, and now things are starting to really settle out, where more people from outside of the industry, from the beginnings of it, are coming into it and giving us experience and knowledge that growing cannabis doesn't necessarily give. And so it's definitely easy to move throughout any kind of position in the industry, and I love seeing how it's grown.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit more about Seed Smith. What was the inspiration behind starting this company? I know that they took a little nod at craft brewing. So maybe explain to us more about what was the background behind this.
So at the time of its, I guess, conception, there was 3 partners that were, 2 of which were previously in the cannabis space. Excuse me. And they had an idea. They wanted to do something bigger, better, and different than what everybody else was doing. You know, the model at that time was you had a dispensary and you bought wholesale flower from a grower. You had a grow and you sold wholesale flower to a dispensary. And, you know, vertical integration was there, but it wasn't so prevalent yet. So they wanted to make sure that they can control the supply chain from every aspect. They ran into problems where, you know, maybe the harvest froze over and, you know, down south, and all of a sudden there's a shortage of flower, and or vice versa. You couldn't get your concentrates on time. And the idea was, okay, if we control every aspect of the supply chain, we're only relying on ourselves for the majority of our products. So that was the initial thought. And then, you know, as this thing grew and, you know, took on a life of its own, the idea was, well, let's make transparency a big part of this too, because, you know, we're getting to a point where people want to know what products they're consuming. You know, at the end of the day, this is something they're putting in their body. Let's figure out a way to do this vertical integration and show exactly how we're doing it. So basically the idea was build a facility at each part of it, whether it's veg, bloom, packaging, the lab, the dispensary, whatever, make sure at least some of it is visible to the outside world. So it was built like a big brewery. The owners, before, you know, while doing the build out, went on all the brewery tours around here and outside of Denver and took nods from what they thought was successful, what they thought could have been worked on, and, you know, turned it into one of the first real cannabis tours that, you know, don't show fluff. It's our real rooms. It's our real loading dock. It's real.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Like, you walk back there and it's part of your guys' warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's a working facility. We tell people that. It's, you know, if anybody's really that curious, they can see exactly what nutrients we use, exactly which soil. They could theoretically do this if they were just nosy enough on the tour.
Yeah, I think it's cool. When we came for the tour, when we were checking the place out, and immediately walked into the back in the veg room, and I thought, oh my gosh, this reminds me totally of like Stranahan's whiskey. I just went on a tour there about a month ago, and I'm like, this is cool because this is exactly what's needed. And Stranahan's was cool because they walk you through like everything, and then this was even cooler because it's like they walk you through everything, and it's cannabis. You know, it's like a whole different experience. And I don't think a lot of people are afforded that. You know, people have been going on, you know, distillery tours and brewery tours for you know, years now. I don't even want to guess, like 20, 30, 40, 50, who knows. But cannabis, you know, how many times have you had a chance to tour a commercial cannabis facility and have that level of transparency?
Well, and I think it brings another level, you know, standard that needs to be seen more in our industry, where we're holding ourselves responsible because you get to come here and see it, and you get to see this being grown. And we've had nothing but wonderful responses about that, because, like, you know, with breweries, distilleries, even I think was it Celestial Seasonings in Boulder that has their tour and everything. Yeah. Like, you know, they hold themselves to a strict standard, which we have not had to do as an industry before. Mm-hmm. I know that people out there, companies out there, you know, said that they're creating this standard, but where's the proof of all of that? And so, you know, that's part of what all this is just we want everybody else to be at the same standard. We want people to be at this level.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's absolutely true. I mean, we were amazed by the lab and how clean it was. I mean, we've been in some labs before and they're not that clean. So, I mean, for you guys to keep it that clean all the time and consumers to see that, that's very important. And that gives them even a higher level of trust to you guys that the products that they're consuming are clearly clean, and that it matters to you that you're offering them that product at that level. So it's important.
Absolutely. And I think like one step further from all that is that, you know, we've started, me and Mike have been looking at things that have been normalized in this industry, that we're sitting here asking ourselves, well, why is this? You know, whether it comes from flushing or how your concentrates are, like if you like a wetter material or if you like a drier material, like why do you think that is better? And we're informing ourselves, and we're going out and we're actually learning more every day about some of these things just aren't factual, that it tastes better or that it is better or that it's higher potency or anything like that.
And I think a lot of that has to do with where I came from in the medical field was, okay, if you needed an answer, you consulted a medical journal which had fact-based evidence, and it was to be taken as the truth. However, when I came out here and as I started to learn, again, you know, at the beginning, I knew nothing about cultivation. I knew nothing about extraction. I really didn't know anything about cannabis. And so I was taking a lot from my peers within both Seed Smith and outside of these walls, but in the industry as a whole. And I was getting so much conflicting information. I said, hey, listen, I want to grow a couple plants. Now that I'm living in Colorado, why not? Let me see if I can do this. And, I consulted a couple different growers, and I was getting different responses, different answers, and I said, well, there's got to be a best practice to this stuff, just like there's a best practice for growing strawberries or whatever else.
Absolutely.
And so it was a little puzzling to me at the beginning that I couldn't get. So I'd basically choose one person and try their method, and then I would have to go another. So I never actually grew the plants, but at least it opened my eyes, and I was like, something's a little askew here. And I understand that it's a new industry, and this is probably how most things go. But the way I look at things is try to get a fact-based answer for it. Why exactly is terpene degradation a thing in warmer dry rooms versus colder dry rooms? Well, the answers I was getting was that it just is. So I've, once we brought Robbie on board here, I shared my mentality with him, and he got on board immediately. And we started kind of just hunting down one thing after another, trying to put the pieces together and bring people outside of the industry to give us real concrete answers as to why these things are happening. At the end of the day, it's horticulture. It's agriculture. We're growing plants. There should be an answer to most of this stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's something that we want to touch on after this break. We're going to touch on the best practices, what you guys do here at Seed Smith, why consumers should care, what consumers should look for, and all the things that go into, the product at the end of the day and what's in my weed. So we'll be right back.
Stay tuned.
Introducing the Dart from Seed Smith. No cutting agents, no artificial terpenes, no residual solvents. Only clean, pure cannabis from a company you can trust.
Don't miss your chance to pick up a Dart by taking part in Dart Days every Friday during the month of November. With the purchase of a $15 pod, you will receive the Dart battery absolutely free. Follow Seed Smith on Instagram and Facebook for new Dart Day locations every Friday with a special doorbuster on Green Friday, November 29th. Don't delay. Get the Dart today.
All right, we're back now. So thanks for the quick break, and thanks for the commercial there from Seed Smith. And so now we want to kind of touch on more of, what goes into your products and what does that actually look like from a commercial standpoint. It's not just you go pop into the dispensary, grab a joint off the counter, go home with some edibles, and then you take them and you don't even know where the hell these even came from. But they start with the cannabis plant just like we have over here. So Robbie, why don't you take us through, your grow cycle where you guys start with your veg bloom and kind of how we end up with a finished little cutie like this.
Absolutely. So at the beginning of all of this, we will take from clones. We've learned that just cloning is the best way to keep the genetics stable, keep consistency going. Growing from seed tends to be a little bit random at times. Mm-hmm. So we have our reliable mothers that we then take our clones from and put those into a vegetative cycle. That vegetative cycle will last a couple of weeks, where we'll go into bloom for another couple months. We are actually doing what we do a little bit differently with our system is that we're not one big warehouse where we're constantly growing multiple bays worth of plants. In our system, we actually harvest every 5 days from different rooms that we have separated from each other, so that if anything were to occur, any problems with the plants, it is sectioned off. Yep. And it's basically quarantined in its own very room. So from that point, we harvest every 5 days, and then it goes into its drying cycle, which will last anywhere from 7 to 14 days, at which point it is then hand trimmed and hand sifted so that we get the quality of bud that we're looking for.
And consumers sometimes will go and seek that out, hand trimmed. I know when I was in the industry, when I was wholesaling it, that was a huge thing that dispensaries wanted always was hand trimmed flower, because the trichomes on that flower are pretty delicate.
Absolutely.
You go throw that into a tumble dryer to trim it, which some people use, and all your trichomes are gone. And so the flower may have tested at X percentage, but you just knocked off all the trichomes, and so the stuff you're actually consuming is not actually as potent as what you're promised. So that's something that I think consumers should be aware of, and don't be shy by walking into a dispensary saying, "Hey, is this hand trimmed?" Or let me take a look at the the finished nugs that I'm going to be purchasing. You could usually tell if it looks pretty beat up, probably machine trimmed. So sorry to interject, but hand trim's a great thing to have.
Really, and hand trim does allow us to be a little bit more allows our quality control to be at a different level than most people. Our bud structure is always intact. It's not trimmed down into larfy nugs or anything like that that I've seen from a lot of machine trim. Terpene degradation is a great point too. When I first got here, and me and Mike were working in the trim and the harvest, and the dry cycles, like that was very important to us, because you can grow perfectly throughout the entire grow process and then completely mess it all up 14 days into the drying.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think that's something too that people don't take into account enough is just the curing process of cannabis. That's probably another thing, Mike, that if you were to ask 10 people, how do you cure your cannabis, you'd get 10 different answers, probably like 12, because I'm sure a lot of those people just have a couple different ones they have to try.
Absolutely.
Yeah, everybody's an expert on this stuff, and you know what's worked for them in the past, and a lot of people aren't so open-minded that they'll try somebody else's methods, but we've kind of dialed it in here. You know, obviously we're growing on a large scale. You know, each one of our 12 bloom rooms has a couple hundred plants in them, so every 5 days a couple hundred plants come down. We've had to figure out a way that we can produce a really good cure on this product at such a large scale. So we've got these airtight barrels that everything goes into with hygrometers, and we just monitor it. If the humidity starts to rise and they're above levels we want, pop it open, give the weed a little mixture, let them bounce around a little bit, put the lid back on, and just continue to monitor. When they're ready to go, we'll take them out, whether it's going out for wholesale, retail, whatever it is, and then the packaging department gets it done as quick as possible to make sure it's on the shelf as fresh as possible.
It does kind of remind me of back to like the distilleries and them like burping their mash and checking the potency and making sure the temperature's just right and all that stuff. And very similar with the cannabis. I mean, people have to check the humidity, the temperature. You have to burp it to make sure, you know, there's air getting in there, but not too much air. I mean, there's a lot that goes into producing a quality cannabis product.
There is. And to touch on what Robbie was saying is that you can grow the greatest weed on earth. However, if you screw up the cure, you can all of a sudden end up with a bucket of hay.
Yeah.
Well, and just like another point in all of the curing is that you have to cure differently down in California versus up here in Colorado.
That's so true. Wow.
Where people that come from Illinois, Florida, California, any of these places, they're like, well, do you guys do a 90-day cure? Do you guys dry it out for 90 days? If we dried out for 90 days up here in Colorado, it would be crumbles. Like it would turn to dust. And so, I mean, even where you're at across the country or across the world, like that takes into effect like how your cure is going. I know guys up here still that are working in the industry that are convinced that they have to keep it in jars for 2 months and burp it consistently and everything like that. And it's no.
And then, I mean, at what scale is that feasible to a commercial production, and how long can you guys?
Absolutely.
You almost have to. I mean, you're gonna at some point you're gonna have to develop commercialized methods to do it on a scale and also at the quality level. Because then, how much subjectivity is there with jars and cannabis, and how much cannabis do you put in that jar? How long do you leave it?
It's also getting much easier too. We work with Agricor. They've been super helpful. That's our testing facility. So incredibly helpful in doing benchmark testing for us. So we can say, okay, this was cured for 7 days, 14 days, 20 days, whatever, and we'll send those tests out and we'll see total cannabinoids, total terpene levels, and the science at the testing labs is getting better, which is in turn giving us way more information than we've ever had before, so we can make these decisions, again, based on real-time information, not just what has worked in the past for other growers. So
Absolutely.
Relying on our testing labs has been a tremendous asset for us.
Yeah, technology is huge.
Okay, so let's move to the extraction. What goes into that process?
So after the trim and the harvest and everything is done, and we've gone through our QC with our bud, our flower, we then take it to extraction. The flower that doesn't meet our QC as far as appearance goes. That's a huge part of all this, is that everybody's expecting to have these big, beautiful nuggets in their bags. Perfectly acceptable, and that's the way that it should be. So we take the extra step, and we actually end up with a lot of extra material that we're like, okay, this is perfect. This is great for extraction. We will take those, we will run those through our CO2 and grab all the terpenes off of those. We will make waxes, shatters. We do have a frozen line, live resins that we're coming out with. And like we go through the entire process of using the entirety of everything that we grow to bring quality products to the concentrate side. And that's actually what leads to our distillate. Distillate has been a very naughty word within the industry for quite a while now. And with everything going on in vaping right now, I think people's tune are changing a little bit to that, especially if you're growing quality products like us. The distillation process is only purifying what we've already grown. And I think that's one of the most important things that we're doing in our MIP is that we have to re-educate an entire industry about this.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's definitely distillation. We're taking material, we're taking all the plant material out of it, we're taking everything else out of it except for THC. Our distillate runs from 95 to 98% typically, and that's because of our distillation process. I'm not going to get into like vodka, like it's triple distilled and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, we do a process where we look at all those micro ideas of what's in distillate, and we remove that. We remove that idea that it's made from bad bud, that it's made from bad flower.
Right.
We're using quality products here, and we're using our own terpenes that we have from our plants.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, to be reintroducing the terpenes from the plant back into it, and I think that not only adds to flavor, but adds to the kind of the synergistic effect of the cannabinoids. But you're totally right. I think distillate has got a bad word because that's kind of when it first started. Everybody's like, oh, here's some shit product, just turn it into distillate. But then it's come around that actually distillate's kind of the way to go with quite a few products. Actually, I know a lot of edibles nowadays are actually made with the distillate because it's easier to infuse. You don't have the hashy flavor is one thing, but also when these people are creating their products, they need a precise dose required by the state, and also for your own consumption, so you're safely consuming. The best way to do that is with a distillate product, where you have something that's 95 to 99% pure. You're putting that in the product. I know when I first started in the industry, we were still selling a lot of amber oil, which would be kind of like a first pass through a CO2 machine. And that's what a lot of the edibles out in the market were made of. Well, you still had a hashy flavor, which a lot of people didn't really like, especially a lot of new consumers coming out of the market who maybe didn't want to be stigmatized by cannabis. And here they are eating a gummy or something and it tastes like cannabis. They're like, oh man, I feel like I'm a stoner, you know? The other half, it's the manufacturers really had a tough time of taking a 70% oil and trying to figure out, okay, I got to make this product 100 milligrams, or I got to make this piece 10 milligrams. How am I going to do that with a 70% product? There's a lot of math involved, I guess. And if stoners, stoners don't really like math. So we got to make things easy with the distillate. On the back end with vape cartridges, like what you guys are doing, I think that's a huge issue right now that people aren't really processing, that it's probably a hell of a lot better to use a distillate product where you kind of know what you're starting with. You're starting with a nearly pure product. And especially with your terpenes, you're using your terpenes to reintroduce back in flavor. You're not using something off the market that you don't really know what's in it. You're also not taking a 70% oil where there's still 30% of innate product that, what is that? It's plant material, but it could also be pesticides. It could also be heavy metals. It could also be, who knows?
Any number 30%
of
any number
who knows?
And again, that's why distillation is important, because we're literally taking everything out of it except for the THC. You're starting with a blank slate.
Yeah, and so I think that's great. And I think that's the way that's how craft beer is produced. That's how your vodka's produced. That's how a lot of things are produced. Your whiskey's produced the same way. They take a pure product, put it into an oak barrel. That's how it gets its flavor. They reintroduce flavor back into the alcohol. So I think that's something that really is really important right now with the vape crisis coming on, is to look for those products that are probably produced with the distillate. Reintroduced terpenes are huge. And I know your guys' product has that. So
yeah, and we believe that it's different strokes for different folks. Obviously, the full spectrum stuff or the terp sauce stuff, which we do also, has its place in the market. However, like Robbie was saying, like the negative connotation for distillate has been a little troubling for us. Knowing what we do here, and obviously it's on full display for anybody to come see if they want. But we harvest our plants, we trim our bud, we take our less than appealing smaller nugs. I mean, it looks great. I'd love to smoke it. Sometimes I do, but it's just a smaller product that people don't want to see in their bag because they assume it's not great. Yeah. And we take that, we walk it across the hall and extract it. Once it goes through our distillation, 97% pure THC at that point. All we do now is take the terpenes we ran prior on that flower and reintroduce them. We don't mix strains. We don't do the quote unquote house salad. you know, if we only got a 20-gram terp yield from a Mob Boss run because we didn't have much plant material, that's all we'll use to terp our distillate for Mob Boss run. So having that ability to be strain specific all the way from flower through shatter, wax, whatever it may be, and into those cartridges, you're getting the exact same profile you would, or as close to, from getting, you know, if you were to take our plant and smoke it as well.
I mean, that's really true. Like, it's not just the profile of Mob Boss. It is Mob Boss.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
true.
It in all honesty, like, sometimes different batches of Mob Boss has a little bit more of a certain terpene than it does another batch. So, like, it's consistent in the way that it works naturally, which is what I'm just really excited about with this product, especially putting it in the dart, because the flavor is just consistently there.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
talk about the
let's
dart,
talk
because I know you guys have put a ton of ingenuity into the dart. Let's talk about that. Mike, you want to take off?
Sure.
You're smiling
So
over there, so.
the dart is, for those of you who don't know, it's a C-Cell product. We've only used C-Cell cartridges since our inception here. After testing through a couple other brands, we just felt that the most consistent and the ones with the best reputation was C-Cell. So we partnered with C-Cell on the dart project. It's limited availability. It's a pod-based vaporizer system. It's pretty much like unlike anything else. You know, there's other pod-based systems, but once you get the dart in your hand, the feel of it, the way it hits, just everything about it is a bit a notch above the competitors in the market.
Yeah, it's sleek.
Yeah, have you guys tried one yet?
We haven't tried it, but we've seen it.
We'll make sure you leave here with one today.
And I mean, you hold it, and it's like, this is a legit product. I mean, it feels like sturdy.
Yeah, it's a steel body.
well.
You know, it's a steel body. It's got some weight to it. It looks pretty discreet for those people who want some discretion when they're consuming. But so we worked with C-Cell to design it exactly how we wanted it. We had a bunch of prototypes come in, come out, go back to C-Cell, give some feedback, did some high altitude testing, did warm temperature testing, did cold temperature testing. And so throughout, it's been about a year now of R&D, and we launched about 6 weeks ago, I'd say now.
wow.
Pretty much a soft launch here. We've opened it up to a few other retailers. Probably in the next couple months here, we'll open it up again and try to get this thing out on the market in a much larger context. But again, it's a vaporizer device that's, you know, got the right materials. It doesn't, you know, the plastic used inside of the cartridge is a plastic derived specifically to be used with oil substances. So
That's important.
yes, so we're in the process of doing extended testing on leaching. We haven't seen anything yet so far, and you know, obviously, you're hearing about heavy metal testing in other states and other things. You know, I'm not going to go too far into it, but we are way ahead of that here, even though it's, you know, hasn't been announced yet. We've been working with both Agricor and Botanicor, their hemp side, just to make sure that everything we're doing here is as safe as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to put together this conversation was to, I mean, vape's getting a lot of heat right now. There's a lot of speculation going on. There's a lot of people throwing a lot of stuff out there as far as, you know, what could be causing this vape illness, and is it really that big of a deal, and this is causing it, that's causing it. I think at the end of the day, it really goes back to the legit operators that are out there, that I know are out there, are doing it the right way. And Seed Smith is one of those with the dart. And I think, you know, what you just said is something that I think a lot of people should really, you know, take to heart and use that message going forward, that these folks are here. They're working with their manufacturer to produce not only a great piece of hardware for you, but also a great piece of hardware made for what is going inside of it. It's not somebody calling up a company saying, hey, I need this for THC or, you know, for nicotine or something, and then putting cannabis in it. They're saying, you know, here's what we're doing. We need a product specific for this. And then you're taking it a step further and then using the testing facilities and basically quality controlling yourself.
Yeah,
So you guys know before you go to market that this is a great product. This is a quality product.
Absolutely, and we all have families and people. We don't want to get sick or, you know, have any kind of lung problems. And there's probably not a person in this company that wouldn't, you know, consume a dart here on a daily basis. You know, we believe in that strongly. You know, terpenes are a pretty unique substance in terms of how it reacts to plastics and glass and a bunch of other different things. So making sure that we're doing the right thing, because at the end of the day, I want to feel comfortable with the product we're making. And ultimately, you know, I'm a pretty tough critic on our stuff. If I feel comfortable, I think a lot of people should as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's take one little quick break, and then we'll wrap up with what consumers should look for when shopping in a dispensary.
Great.
guys, we are back, and we're going to finish up today with what consumers should look for when they're entering a dispensary. What kind of questions should people be asking when they're looking for flower, concentrates, edibles? What should they be looking for? So why don't you just start, Mike?
I think the best overall advice I can give to anybody that's entering a dispensary, whether it's the first time they've ever been in one or they're a daily shopper, is to advocate for yourself by asking questions about the process in which their products are made. Gone are the days where you have to consume something where you don't exactly know where it's produced, how it's produced, with what chemicals or byproducts or anything else. This information should be made available to anybody that's interested. A big part of the Seed Smith, ideology was, well, we can rest our customers assured if they have any questions about this stuff, we're able to take them on a tour and show them exactly what our grow rooms look like, show them exactly what our extraction facility looks like. They're going to see real Seed Smith employees working on this tour, and they're going to start to understand and start to connect the dots here that, okay, there's those plants in veg, and then, there's that strain I love, Tango, in bloom. Well, I love the way it looked. I saw the irrigation system. We talked about exactly what lights they're using, everything about it to see how clean our bloom rooms are. And the only process, and then they'll see our packaging room, and they can see our flower being packaged, they can see our cartridges being filled, they can see our concentrates being weighed out, and now all of a sudden you have the entire assembly line of our products start to finish, and you can buy it right here. So you can see it happen in real time. And if there's something you saw in the window on our packaging room and say, hey, listen, I want to try that when I get to the dispensary, we can let you know what it is, see if we have a previous batch. If not, we'll let you know, hey, in 4 days or so, we'll have it up in the dispensary. But making sure you completely understand what it is you're getting and how it's being made, I think is the biggest piece of advice I can give to people.
Yeah, and that's so important. I mean, because when I go into a dispensary and ask, like, oh, well, who grew this? They're like, well, we don't know. Yeah. They're like, well, not sure. And that's a problem.
We even went to one dispensary, and the farm had sent us there to go purchase their product, and we go in and say, hey, it was actually Astor Farms.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, can we get some Astor Farms?
It wasn't Astor Farms. Sorry. It was
Alpen Stash.
Alpen Stash, yeah.
We go to a dispensary and purchase Alpen Stash, and these guys had just dropped it off like the day before, and we're like, hey, we're going to try some of that new Alpen Stash. And these people are like, we don't carry that here. And we're like, well, they just told us yesterday they dropped it off, and they had to go like ask a manager and like dig it out. And I'm like, that's pretty sad that these bud tenders don't even know where this stuff's coming from. And so that should be like your first sign of like your dispensary doesn't even know where these products are coming from. They don't even know the farms that are producing this. They don't know much about the product. Yeah. That's kind of frightening.
It is. And, that's the thing. We do white label quite a bit of flower. I'd say to probably over 20 dispensaries. It's easy to spot when you walk in and you see our strain list, and that's fine if, a lot of places will brand it as their own. I mean, that's understandable. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what we do with our wholesale team is we encourage them to offer Budtender Tours. So we have structured tours set up for budtenders that carry our flower, our concentrates, the dart, anything. So they can come here, they can understand the Seed Smith process. So this way they're educated on our products at their own store. Mm-hmm. So if you want to buy Seed Smith products from wherever, Starbuds or wherever else that we're carried in, those budtenders should be just as educated as ours on our products. They should say, hey, listen, if you want to see Seed Smiths grow, if you're not comfortable with this product or you want to learn more, go take the tour there. It's free. Just check it out. And then, that rests people at ease a bit.
Absolutely.
I think that's cool, too, and that's a great point that I hadn't even thought of yet. But you guys brand your own flower. I mean, that's a lot of transparency there. I know a lot of cultivations here in the state of Colorado that will not even brand their flower. They just wholesale it and say, put your own name on it or sell it like whatever, So it's
been a struggle. There's some places that will openly say, yes, this is Seed Smith flower. We are still new at this thing. We're pretty much rookies in the industry. We've had all 6 licenses here, our both dispensary, med and rec, our MIP licenses, and our grow licenses firing for maybe a year and a half total now, all 6 at once. So, at the beginning, we didn't really have a pedestal to stand on and say, hey, listen, if we're going to sell you Seed Smith flower, we want to make sure that your customers know this is Seed Smith flower. However, we're getting to a point now where it's much easier for us to do that because of our reputation, because of how we've grown, and because, people understand that we're doing things ethically. It's a lot easier for us to say, listen, if you want to buy our flower, you're going to have to let people know it's Seed Smith flower.
Yeah. And it's probably better for them anyways to say, hey, this is Seed Smith flower.
Yeah, it carries a bit of weight now.
Yeah, that's good.
What about you, Robbie? What kind of advice you got for consumers walking into a dispensary?
Low and slow.
I like that.
If you're a new person to this, if you're testing out the waters, the one thing that will turn you off is doing too much, is smoking too much, eating too much, dabbing too much, whatever it is. I always use, like, when you started out drinking, you didn't go straight for Everclear.
Yeah.
And you didn't drink a big bottle of it.
Well, some people do.
It's true. And, like,
I mean, the experience is going to be
terrible.
very good.
Though, exactly. The experience is going to be terrible, and you're not going to want to do that again. When you take the mentality of low and slow, you're starting out at a point of, okay, I'm just going to see how this makes me feel. I'm going to see how this affects me. I'm going to see all that comes with it. Now, if not much comes with it, keep on going. If you're at 7 milligrams and you're good, like, stay with that and just continually work with that. It's kind of amazing to see people and how they react to different products. Where I've been trying all of these for many years, it's amazing how many people that are new to this want to jump into the edibles.
Right.
And it's like, even as somebody who's been smoking for a long time and eating edibles for a long time.
It is kind of a true point. People always do go after the edibles for some reason.
Because it's
Well,
candy.
even
it looks
I'm like,
nice.
I don't know.
Because a
if
lot
I'd
of people
even-
don't want to smoke. They've never smoked in their lives. They've never smoked cigarettes. They don't smoke cigars. It's
Exactly.
something they've never done. So to start smoking at 40 years old just to consume cannabis could be a turnoff for a lot of people.
And they don't understand vaping, right? Like, so I understand why people go there, and that's why I say it, low and slow on that. Now, when it comes to flower, when it comes to concentrates, it's always follow your nose. Anybody here who has smoked cannabis, all of us have, like, what smells your body likes, what smells your brain likes, and that's probably going to be the most enjoyable strain that you're going to smoke. I can't smoke the citrus strains. It gives me really bad.
Same.
It just,
You like smell it and your eyes just like.
yeah. I'm like, oh god. So when it comes to more seasoned people and they're looking for their flower, follow your nose. And just don't buy the hay stuff. Just don't buy it.
Hey, some of that hay stuff's good if you shake it around a little bit. You get a little
Crack it open.
You gotta crack it, yeah.
and you can get those terpenes out.
Got to rehydrate it.
Well, I think that's great advice for consumers, and anybody who wants to learn more, I encourage you to come out to Seed Smith. I know you guys are like 10 minutes from the airport, 20 minutes from downtown, so they're conveniently located. And if you're over in this area, come check them out. It's free, and I think you also get a little discount on your purchase when you do the full tour as well, so that's a little bit of an incentive. And yeah, check out the Dart. I mean, I think you guys are doing a great job with your products, and I think they're very clean and reputable and trustworthy, and people should check them out.
Yeah, and I think, if you're listening and you're watching the show, thank you for doing that, first of all, because it shows you actually care about either what you're doing or what other people are doing in the industry. So we appreciate your support, and be sure to share with others and kind of bring others along with our elevated educational journey here. The theme of the show for this week, or this first show this season, is kind of what's in your weed. And I want to thank Seed Smith for being transparent, being ethical, and allowing us to come in and film and interview you guys about what you guys are doing, and at the same time helping to educate consumers about what to look for when you're shopping for weed or cannabis or marijuana, whatever you call it. It's all the same, but you still should be asking those questions of what's in my weed. And so don't be shy. Go into a dispensary, ask them about how is this cultivated, where did this come from, is my gummy, does this have sugar, is it vegan? The vape cartridge, is it distillate? Is it clean? Is it pesticide free? Who produced this? Are these reintroduced terps? Are these unnatural terps? Are these fruit flavorings that are synthetic? I mean, there's a host of questions, and if you don't have enough questions to ask, then hit Lucy and I up, because we can give you a whole list of questions to be asking when you go shop. But I think that's the only way that we're ever going to break the stigma, for one, and also change the culture that needs to happen so cannabis consumers and people who are using it for medicinal purposes can have clean cannabis and ethically produced cannabis by a company who cares about you. And I think that's important. So the vape scare is happening right now. It is a very serious issue, but at the same time, I do hope you guys do a little bit of education yourself and go seek out the companies who are doing it the right way, because there's a whole host of companies who have already put in a lot of the time and the effort to produce a quality vape product. And we hope that you guys go and seek those out. And at the same time, do your part. Educate your friends, educate your family, educate your neighbors, educate your bosses if you have to. If you see something that's going wrong, don't be afraid to speak up. We're still new in this industry, and that's what it's going to take, is people speaking up saying, hey, that's not the right way to do it. I watched a show where I learned this, or I heard this from a doctor, or I've seen 10 people do this now, and this is probably the correct way. And it's going to be that helps to develop those best practices, and all of us kind of sticking together and doing this the right way. So thank you guys for allowing us to bless this space and and extend our educational reach.
It's our pleasure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. With that, I'm Lit,
I'm Lucid.
and that's it.
Laters.